Welcome everybody back here at Veil of Sound with our regular Sunday video interview. And I have somebody here on the show whose work has been highly important for a lot of people, including me, because they have been releasing records for 22 years, I think, by now. And on Friday, their next record is coming up. So this is September 20-something, and the Friday, in 5 days, you will be able to finally listen to Xiu Xiu's newest record. So I'm very, very happy to have Jamie Stewart here on the show. Jamie, thanks for joining.
Thanks. That was a very nice introduction. Thank you.
Highly appreciative that you're here. Jamie, the thing that we always ask first is, do you have any kind of band merch, shirt, or anything by yourself or from some friend of yours that you want to pluck? I'll give you a moment to think about it while I pluck some friends of mine. A wonderful Slow Crush from Belgium, who can proudly say that they produce the only shirt that I ever bought by now, which has pink on it. But I just love it.
Very good. It's very good. That's a good shirt. You mean like our own stuff? I imagine. Our own stuff or a friend's thing?
Yeah, whatever you want to.
Our tour manager lives in Czech Republic, and he has an incredibly great label called Stoned to Death. It has great merch, incredible records. He does a lot of reissues, a lot of deep dives into a lot of Eastern European psychedelic music, and then psychedelic music from all over the world. So I heartily back Stoned to Death records and from Polyvinyl, Czech Republic.
So if anybody wants to find out very quickly what Jamie's referring to, look into our links, into our little text below. You will find the link to that label. And the second question that we always ask, Jamie, is where are we catching you right now?
From Berlin, Deutschland. And I'm home. Oh, sorry. I'm home. I'm in my apartment.
Yeah. But home is now Berlin. I mean, like you moved from Los Angeles to Berlin.
Correct.
For how long have you been in Berlin by now?
Coming up on 2 years. It'll be 2 years this October. So a year and however many, 10 months. So it's been not a very long time, but getting settled, getting acclimated.
Is there any kind of, or was there any kind of special motivation for you to move to Berlin?
Yeah, there was a lot of things. My bandmate Angela Saw and I have been roommates for 1,000 years, and she used to live here.
Nice hint at that awful Vanessa Carlton songs, like 1,000. What is it? Okay. Sorry for interrupting.
So Angela's lived here before, and there's a performance and art group in Berlin called Cheap that we've done music for several performances and installations, and I have a very close relationship with those people. So we've spent a lot of time here, and it's a city we're familiar with. And where we had been living in LA, which is the city we're both from, we both grew up there, and I was born there. And then we both grew up there, and we moved to different places, and then we moved back to LA in 2012. And at that time, the city was going through a really wonderful renaissance. Just kind of any interesting thing that you could imagine was happening there. The food was great art, great music scene. People seemed to be in a good mood. It's like a negative veil had lifted. It's a city that's been through a lot of trouble at different times. And it was fantastic up until the pandemic, and then it really got the shit beat out of it during the pandemic and never seemed to really heal, and was just becoming just a very sad place to be. Especially it's my hometown, and I feel a great affection for it, and Angela feels the same way. So it's just, we were feeling very just kind of defeated by everything that was going on around us. And at that same time, the art institution Silent Green has a arts residency, and they offered it to us. Basically, give us 3 months of an apartment, pay for our flight, give us a stipend when we first moved here. We've already had this connection to the city, so Silent Green was making it incredibly easy for us to move here. LA was too hard to be in, and we have a connection here anyway. So all these things are happening at the same time. That seemed like it would have been ridiculous not to take advantage of of what the universe was making clear to us needed to happen.
But then I have to ask, if you have already been living in Berlin for nearly 2 years, the last record, Ignore Grief, that was still written in LA, or is it also already?
We finished that in LA. It came out by the time we had moved, but it had been completed when we were in Los Angeles. But this new record, we recorded half of it in LA and half of it in Berlin.
Mm-hmm. And as you've been talking about the pandemic, how much influence had the pandemic on Ignore Grief and on the record before Dear God? Not Dear God, what is it?
Oh No.
Oh No, right?
Yeah. Clearly in a subconscious way, it must have. I mean, it was the first time we had ever taken a significant break from touring. And obviously the neighborhood that we lived in specifically was very, very negatively affected by the pandemic. It was one of the places where the most people in Los Angeles died. So that was going on around us while that was happening. And also at that same time that we were working on those records, before Angela moved, she worked in public health, and she worked directly in public health, dealing with the pandemic at that time. So she wasn't only dealing with it as just as an earthling like everybody else dealt with it. Her entire workday was taken up with trying to alleviate it for the most depressed populations in the county. So it was very particularly heavy for her, and because we lived together, I was getting a lot of that same kind of energy. So it's hard to say in a direct way how, but it was a huge and significant part of both of our lives. I mean, as it was for everybody, but because our neighborhood was so negatively affected because of Angela's job, it was hard to get away from it in any way.
So then Berlin for you is like a real fresh start, isn't it?
An attempt at one, for certain. It seems a little corny that it took me. This seems like a very obvious thing. I thought it would be like a complete fresh start, but basically every place you go has its own problems, which is a different set of problems. But so, it was a very adult life lesson for me to learn. But I'm very, very happy we moved. I miss Los Angeles a lot, but I feel very, very lucky to be in Berlin, and certainly under the circumstances in which we were able to move here.
Yeah, and of course, it's a way that, how should I say, this fresh start that you have now doesn't mean that it's like a never-ending thing, that you never will move back to Los Angeles or any other place in the world. It's your right now home, not the forever necessarily home.
Yeah. I'm not sure how what it's going to be like, but certainly we have a great studio here. We were able to get a decent apartment, so at least in the foreseeable future, it seems like home. But the world changes and life changes, so we'll see what happens.
It's interesting because I don't want to say there is like a huge, vast change in your sound, but if anybody asks me how I would categorize the new upcoming record, I would say that it has a certain opulence.
That's an interesting word to use. I don't disagree. That's nice. I like that. That's nice.
Yeah, it's the way that I always like to think of my first reaction to records. And the first reaction to the first track was like, okay, that sounds like, I don't know, a cabaret, a good cabaret, not one of those Humpty Dumpty ones, but a good cabaret like 80, 90 years ago, because it's very intimate at one point, but also very secretive in another way. Would you agree that it's one of your more elegant records in a way?
Oh, I know that I'm supposed to be able to talk clearly about records that we've done, but I think I might be the worst person to ask. I don't have really any perspective on it at all. I mean, I work super intensely on it, and I have no distance from it whatsoever. And then we immediately start working on the next thing, so I don't really get a chance to analyze it. I think maybe in 10 years, when I've toured this record a lot, and I've had some distance from it, I could talk about it. So possibly, I would love to accept that description, because I think it's a nice compliment. So I'll say yes. I agree with you.
Whatever you want to do with my description.
But my brain is still pretty melted. We're rehearsing for this record. Right? We just finished like the second before we started talking. Mm-hmm. So I'm getting to know the songs in a more intimate way, and in a more direct way. But it takes me a long time once we finish something to really be able to have a conception of what a record actually is.
Is that also because you've already hinted at it? You know, making music is not just an integral part of your life. When somebody like you has been releasing record after record after record, this is now your 18th full length, not even counting all the little formats that you've been putting out. Is that the problem, that that music is your life?
That's
problem
fair.
In a positive way.
Oh yeah. Oh no, that's definitely the case. I don't mean this to be mellow, but I could not live without it. It is the longer that I do it, the deeper it becomes a part of, you know, what defines my existence and defines how my day is organized, defines what I think about, and you know, what I think is important, and where I organize my emotional life and how I organize my emotional life. And because of that, I feel just astonishingly lucky that, I mean, we're certainly not wealthy by any means, but I haven't had a day job in a million years. You know, that's somehow by the grace of the goddess of music, we've been able to keep doing this. So I feel like because we have been, you know, granted that small miracle, I have to take every conceivable advantage of the time that affords us to keep working on things until, you know, someday that spell will break and I have to get a normal job again. But until then, I'm just going to keep cranking it out as much as possible.
We'll be talking about your fans that follow you feverishly, I would say, for years. We'll be talking about them in a moment, but I would like to stick to that, you know, like music is you thing a little bit. When you say that it's hard for you to grasp a record, are you able to then at least in a way talk about certain songs where you say like, okay, I know what we wanted to do here and there?
Yeah, I'll do my best. There may be things where I don't know, but I'll definitely try to answer. And they're fair questions.
But how do I have to imagine your daily life? You've already said you have like a day job. And
no, I don't have a day job. I don't have a day job. I haven't had a day job in a long time.
Okay. So, but then like, is it like the Nick Cave formula? Okay, I sit down at 9 o'clock and I work till 5, right, trying to write songs, or is it not as rigid?
Oh, I thoroughly appreciate the Nick Cave model. I slightly different hours. I go to the studio generally from 3 to 11, but it's about the same.
It's about the same time.
Yeah, I have like a lot of people, I have really bad depression, and I find if I keep a fairly tight schedule, that really helps with that. Also, I have found that I tend to feel more inspired if I'm working a lot. If I take a long break, you know, if I have to go on vacation or want to go on vacation it's difficult for me to get the momentum going again. But if I'm working all of the time, the spark shimmers a lot more brightly. So doing it every day for me helps keep that going. In addition to just being a nice way to stave off being slightly insane.
So then, I'm very sure you're already working on new stuff. Again, something that we might get next year or the year after, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to ask if we can hear anything about it because, like,
it's still in like the most gooey amorphous phase. We're doing just a lot of sketches. It's a lot of work, but with no idea what it's going to be like yet.
It's interesting that you say that. How do we have to imagine Xiu Xiu writing songs?
It really depends. We don't have a totally set way of doing it. And try not to think about it that much. Just try to have it be kind of a lower brainstem activity. Go into the studio. Just over the course of time, we have collected a lot of instruments and pick something up, start touching it or playing it, and sort of see what is emerging out of that. If it leads to some idea, and at the same time, when we're not in the studio, just ingesting a lot of other, forms of art or other inspiration, and trying to always be aware of which doors are being open. Both Angela and I have a bunch of notebooks. We take a lot of notes, and as the record develops, we explore the things that we have written down and then the parameters of what the record will be tend to start becoming more clear. And then we see which of the sketches that we have done seem to fit into that, or which they could become, or which could be more developed. Just last night, Angela and I went to the studio and I played her just really nascent versions of stuff just to see if this shape worked. And she said, like 3 of the 8 things I played her, that 3 of those seem like they're going somewhere. And so it tends to just be a big spread out morass with no particular direction, and then like over time things get cut away and cut away and cut away and cut away until it becomes more and more clear.
There are 2 things that I find striking about what you just said. First thing is that it's interesting that somebody who says, okay, I like to have some kind of rigid daily routine, on the other hand, is so open towards inspiration and undecidedness, preconceived undecidedness.
But between very specific hours of the day.
Yeah, exactly. So from 3 to 11, I'm spontaneous.
Then after that, I got things like going down the list.
And the other thing is, and that is something that I find even more interesting. I mean, like you've said that you and Angela basically go to the studio more or less at the same times. You have lived together. Do you still live in the same apartment?
Yeah.
So you even live together. How good of a friendship, relationship must that be for you to basically spend not 24/7, but probably on average like 15, 16?
We do spend a lot of time together. She doesn't come to the studio every day. She has her own studio at home. So it's not quite as much time, but we do spend an extraordinary amount of time together. We have been very best friends for years and years and years, and trust each other and support each other. That said, we do fight a lot, because we spend so much time together. and for a while she was touring in the band, and then she wanted to pursue working in social services. She did that for a long time, and then she was ready to start touring in the band again. She'd always been a part of the records, but had a phase where she was touring, stopped touring, and now she's touring again. I noticed we certainly fought less when she had a day job because we didn't see each other as much, and we fight more because we see each other more. But in the end, we're always the reason we fight is because we're always trying to solve a problem. We're not trying to berate the other person. Mm-hmm. But it's a struggle sometimes, but also she's a fucking badass. I feel incredibly lucky to play with her. And anything that she does that annoys me, I am more than willing to put up with because of all the benefits of her as both a player and a person and a friend. And since she started touring again, she's really helped out a lot with the management of the band. And she's a gem, one of my favorite people in the entire world.
Could you then imagine doing this without her? Doing this project, this band?
I think if she completely quit or died or moved to Jupiter or something, I think Xiu Xiu would be done. I couldn't do it without her. There was a time where I felt like I could, but now I couldn't. I wouldn't quit music, but this band would be done.
Yeah, you can't quit music as we've already found out. It's you. So you cannot quit yourself.
Yeah, but if she stopped doing Xiu Xiu, that would be the end of that band. But hopefully she won't.
So let's talk about a few of her songs on the record. And I would definitely like to start with the opener, with Arp Omni. It's a wonderful track.
Oh, thanks.
It's one of those tracks which, if I had to make a love song mixtape, it would be on it.
That's very nice of you to say. Thank you.
Because I think it's a very, very gentle song, and it's very clear in what it tries to say. But there is it's about love. That is not a question. The only question is, it seems like an homage to a loved person, to a beloved person. And now the question is, do you think that someone like that person in the record, somebody who's able to help you break down boundaries and walls. Is that something that is that characteristic something that defines real love? You know, finding somebody who helps you break boundaries, break walls.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that that's the point of living and the point of opening your heart that much to another person, is that by doing so, you're both able to expand as people and grow as people and improve as people, see life in a different way, um, to be able to be more deeply moved by a broader number of things. I mean, you know, falling in love with somebody is an incredible risk, and the value of that risk are the things that you potentially get out of it, which are the things that I just said. Life becomes more exciting. Life becomes more meaningful. Your physical self has much more meaning. If it goes on for long enough, your family relationships can potentially become positively entwined. But on the other side, because you put so much at stake, if it goes badly, you lose all of those things, and it could be the end of that phase of your life, or if it's bad enough, it drives people to suicide. But why live if not to risk the life that you have?
Oh yeah. That is something that, for me, one of the nicest quotes about love has been done by Anne Rice in one of her books, where she says, "Life is to love and to increase our knowledge of the intricacies of creation." And I think you only do
That's
that
beautiful.
through love.
Yeah. I mean, it is the most redeeming quality of humans, who, as a species, have few redeeming qualities, but art and love are among them.
Yeah. And also, being able to love at some point unconditionally. I think that's also something. And that is something that's also where the opulence thing came in. I think that is something that you can hear very nicely in Arp Omni. It's gentle, it's open. I don't want to say orchestration because that sounds so classical, but the soundscapes behind it are really, really nice. I like that a lot.
Thank you.
At the same time, it also struck something in me once again that I have with a lot of Xiu Xiu songs, and that are the track titles. I've read somewhere that you said that track titles can be little poems.
Yeah, that's still true.
With some of the track titles on the new record, I can definitely see that. But with some of them, because of lack of knowledge, I find it hard to see that. For example, with Arp Omni, or with, where was it? Beneficium.
So for those two, I could tell you. Some of them I probably don't know, or it's some subconscious thing, but those two I could tell you. The American English pronunciation of Omni is Omni, so I'll just say but say it however you say it.
Yeah,
so Arp Omni is a type of synthesizer, and the very first sound, the sort of bubbly sound that you hear in the beginning of the song, is from the Arp Omni.
Okay.
And it's a 70 or like a probably early 80s analog synthesizer. It's very big, very cumbersome, and very delicate. And we weren't able to take it with us when we moved. We had to leave a lot of analog equipment and just sell it or give it to friends, because we just never survived the move. So it's my favorite synthesizer, and I couldn't take it. And it made the first sound, so I wanted to do a little tribute to my little beeping friend who I had to leave in Los Angeles.
Is that also a little bit of an homage to your hometown, or a little connection to it?
Yeah, I guess I didn't realize it at the time, but I guess it is. Yeah. We did that. That's a song that I think we wrote the music for it in Los Angeles, but the lyrics were written in Berlin. So there's a connection between both. And we recorded the. Actually, I think we recorded it in both places too. I think there's some guitar that we recorded in Berlin and the vocals. Anyway, but Beneficium is, and I'm not sure I'm saying it right, because I think it's a Latin and Italian word, but
I'm an English teacher. I don't need to know Latin.
Okay. But it means either somebody who concocts poison or something that has to do with poison, or somebody who poisons somebody else by means
okay, so it's the opposite of beneficium. Okay, I get it.
Oh yeah, that's a good way to put it. And that song is probably one of the more impressionistic songs we did. David Kendrick, our drummer, who's a great lyricist, he wrote about half the lyrics and I wrote the other half. I think he sent me some lyrics and I responded to them by writing the rest of them. And I don't know what the song is about for him, but to me, and in no way would I want to declare that this was the song has to be about for anybody else. Have it be whatever you want it to be about. But for me, it's about being lost in a liminal space, lost between what you should be doing and what you shouldn't be doing, lost between light and dark, being uncertain about how to exist in the world, because either in your own self you've become so confused you don't know how to exist, or because life outside has become so confused, either in a literal way or potentially in some sort of like cosmic split between existence in a in a very almost speculative fiction type of way. And the idea of a beneficium as an individual sort of pushing that confusion along, or being, kind of the devil on your shoulder, and that causing you to do bad things or doing bad things to you, and driving that uncertainty. Generally, this song is about uncertainty on an existential level, but that uncertainty being driven by an individual or a particular force or something like that.
Beneficium also, on another level, is a very, very interesting track, because it has some parts that I would also expect on like a classic 70s prog rock record. There are some key elements on there. Huh?
Yeah, we were surprised that happened. I like, on paper, I'm interested in prog. I think the sort of imagery and culture of prog don't really necessarily resonate with me musically, but I think I like reading about it. I think it's very interesting. Similarly to video games, I don't play a lot of video games, but I think video game culture is very interesting, and I think prog rock culture is very interesting. I mentioned before, we don't really try to think about what we're writing and just kind of let it happen. And we were very surprised that Goddess of Music had the opening and closing of the song really sound like a 70s prog riff. But we thought, okay, that's what's being presented to us. Let's fucking lean into it and really go for it.
So what we hear there, what we're talking about, do we hear a guitar or do we hear a synth?
In the intro and the end, the
exactly.
riff in the beginning.
The scales?
It's this 70s Yamaha organ that we had to leave in LA too. Angela played that, and she played Moog bass, which is a synthesizer, and there's bass guitar and guitar. So it's a lot of things layered, which is a very prog way to do it.
And that's another one of those moments where I felt like, okay, there is a lot happening here. That's very, very opulent. It's very big in a way.
And drums. Yeah, and drums as well. Yeah.
And then there are these moments where we also get I don't want to say tongue in cheek, but it's a little bit like you have a track title on the new record, which is just letters TDFTW. And in one interview with our dear colleagues at The Quietus, you said, "The devil's forgiven, that's why."
Yeah, that's what the initials stand for.
Is that then a connection to Beneficium?
Probably in an undercurrent kind of way. I mean, that song is also a lot about existing in another plane. When we were writing it, and again, I don't want to impose my own interpretations, but my personal interpretation, I saw it very much as a song about an exploded landscape that the devil roam freely in, causing all manner of decay and havoc and violence and hatred, and finding oneself in that landscape and not really being able to do anything about it, not being able to escape. And the only conceivable escape is essentially to forgive the devil. I mean, it's only going to get worse. Think you're going to die anyway. Do you want to in addition to dying, do you want to carry the burden of your own hatred when you're in this landscape that is completely driven by hatred and violence? So it's an exploration of that. Personally, I am really struggle with holding a grudge. If somebody does something shitty to me, it's incredibly difficult for me to let it go. It's something I'm working on a lot. I don't like it about myself. It's not a good way to live. So that song is additionally an exploration of that. If one can forgive a literal Satan or a devil that has taken some kind of physical form, if that is possible, then certainly I can forgive somebody who 5 years ago fucked me over some shows or something like that.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's very, very interesting, that in this realm of music, we find people who are so open towards forgiving people who did them bad. I really like that about the scene that we're talking about here. And coming back to the poetic track titles, I think one of the very, very poetic ones is Pale Flower. And now the question is not only about the meaning of it, because I think that is, pretty clear, a delicate thing, something fragile. But who comes up with these track titles? Do you already have them in mind before you start writing a song, or do they come somewhere in the process or after?
It depends. We record in Pro Tools, and before you begin a song, you have to call it something. It has to have a working title.
Of course.
Occasionally, because I've worked on lyrics before, I'll give it the title that actually ends up being in that song. And a lot of times I have to call it something. Pale Flower is about what you described, about something delicate, but it's also the name of a Japanese movie from the early 60s that both Angela and I really love, that we happened to be watching at the time that we were beginning to work on that song. And it's also a movie that it doesn't really have anything to do with the song, but visually and aesthetically, it's been something that's been inspirational to us on and off. We've watched it a few times throughout the course of Xiu Xiu. So it was just something in that moment that the song began when we were in the midst of watching that movie, I think for the third or fourth time.
Is there? Yeah, you go on first.
Oh, that's all I have to say.
Is there something that you would describe in yourself as some kind of do you like Japanese culture? Let's put it like that quickly.
Oh, I mean, I like Japanese culture and that I like the world. I mean, there's a period in Japanese film history from the late 50s to the early 70s.
Yep.
That for me is I don't, there's just some times in some places where the stars align and there's a particular group of people working and it's completely amazing. That's the scene in the film world in Japan. I've never gotten over it. It has remained massively inspirational to me and influential and wonderful. I mean, I wouldn't say in any way that I'm like generally a Japanophile, but that particular period, and there's certain Japanese authors that mean a lot to me also. And we did have another record named after a Japanese Pinku movie called Angel Guts Red Classroom that came out in 2014, which is actually doesn't really have anything to do with the period of Japanese film that I'm talking about. That came out in the 70s, but it was sort of separate from that era. But all those Pinku movies also, I think, are just mind melting.
And it's interesting, that you mentioned that, because I don't know, when listening to it, I had this very image, if like something fragile and something Japanese in a way. It might also have to do with when I was listening to the track for the first time, I was going through your discography and I came along the cover of the Twin Peaks record that you did, which is basically,
Oh, actually,
I know that the Twin Peaks record is not the Japanese flag.
Oh, yeah.
It
is the Japanese flag. Yeah. It's supposed to be Dr. Jacoby's glasses.
Yeah.
If you open it up, you get both sides. But yes, it is also the circle on the white field, which is the Japanese flag.
And then I looked it up, and I've heard already that you like Japanese movies of a certain period a lot. So my question for you is, if you could give people 1 or 2 or maybe 3 Japanese movies from that period where you say okay, that is something that you should, if you haven't started watching these kinds of movies, that's something that you would start with.
Pale Flower, the aforementioned, definitely one of them. There's another one, and I'm very bad at remembering directors' names. The other one's called Gate of Flesh. Unbelievable.
Day of Flesh?
Gate of
Gate
Flesh.
of Flesh. Because of course we'll also put those into the notes.
Under the Blossoming Cherry Tree. Then there's several movies with that title. This one's from the early 70s, I think 1974. One of the most bizarre and beautiful movies I've ever seen. And then probably Insect Woman would be another one. But those four are mind-bogglingly superb.
It's also very nice that you don't mention the obvious Akira Kurosawa 7 Japanese samurai movies.
Oh, they're great. They're spectacular, but they're a different type of movie than these.
And it's not to say that those are bad movies. You know, Kurosawa, and especially the Samurai, that's a very good movie. Also given the historical background of it. But it's the most obvious choice.
It's a great movie and about more of a historical piece. These ones are largely about crime and depravity, but depicted in an incredibly original and fascinating and curious way. And how they're shot, and there's a particular film composer that's in a lot of these named Toru Takemitsu, who is just a world-changing film composer. And so he didn't do all these movies, but his influence is on all of them. He's somebody actually definitely explore his film soundtracks also, if you find these movies interesting.
It's interesting that you mentioned soundtracking, because you have played the Twin Peaks music 7-8 years ago.
We did it a lot, 2015 to 2017. Yeah, so it's been a little bit.
If you could score if you could produce an alternate score to any classical movie or any movie, is there one where you say like, okay, that's something that I would like to do?
I certainly would.
And while Jamie thinks about it, if you want to know something about doing that, look up our interview with Sleep Bomb, who do that a lot. They are really good at producing alternative soundtracks.
I've never thought about doing that. I don't have a good answer right off the bat, because I'm a big film fan. I sort of like I feel sort of like there's like a bottleneck in my mind of movies I'd want to do it for. But that's a good idea. That's certainly something I'd like to explore.
So if you ever come up with an alternative soundtrack, we'll happily do the premiere for that. That's not a problem.
I appreciate it. I'll give Veil of Sound credit for the idea. Thanks.
You don't have to, my friend. You don't have to. But it's something that I really like about Xiu Xiu's music. It's always very, very, and that is also something that you have already hinted at. You know, you are open to give everybody's interpretation of your own work the same credit. I think that is also something that would be very interesting if you produced something where you see, for example, a movie and give your own musical interpretation to it. That is something that I would like to see. You have said that basically everybody is able to give his or her own or their own interpretation to your work. Of course, in a certain limited moral world and realm. Have you ever come across an interpretation of your work where you say like, okay, that is so far away that it is already derogatory to the track itself?
I think the only
you don't have to say when or where, but just
sure,
if.
yeah. I cannot, off the top of my head, I can't think of one. But I don't tend to. I mean, I'm generally pretty insecure. I have a very thin skin. I never read any music reviews of our own records, or it freaks me out too much. It just makes me feel too right. Even if they're really good, it makes me feel bad, and if they're bad, it makes me feel awful. So I'm sure there have been many, particularly in bad reviews, that are wildly off the mark, and that if I read them, I would take incredible umbrage at their interpretations. But I can't think of any that bothered me off the top of my head in terms of day-to-day interactions I had with people who listen to records as music fans. And I mean, you know, you use the word derogatory. I mean, if somebody had some derogatory interpretation of it, specifically derogatory, or you know, then I might have a difficult time with it. But the songs are for other people to get something out of, and I hope very much. That's why I'm always a little hesitant to say my own interpretations, because I don't want to color anybody's own feelings about it. I hope very much people will have their own interpretations of what they're about, because they are for other people to get something out of.
And here we come to what I hinted at before. One thing that always comes up when you read about your band, your project, and when you follow a few of your fans, several of your hardcore fans are friends of mine online, and they're partying.
Tell them I said hi and thank you.
I will tell them. I will. So I'll give one special shout out to my friend Jeff in Canada. You know who I mean.
I do know who you mean. Hi, Jeff.
Yes, exactly. He's already very excited about the new record. I can tell that. But something that I wanted to say, you have, I don't want to say a cult following, because that's always such a high word, but you have some very, very loyal fans. Are you thinking of those when you are writing stuff, or is it first and foremost for you and Angela?
It's somewhere in between. We are very much dedicated to the point of the records being for someone to get something out of. But we also know that if we're trying to predict what that is, or attempt to cater to what we perceive that is, or what we have interpreted what that is, then it's not going to ring true, and that the people for whom we are making the records aren't going to get the record. They're not going to get the record that we want to give them. It's not going to be an honest piece of work. So we just try to follow whatever the goddess of music is directing us to do, and to put our whole hearts into it, and to do the best that we can every time. Sometimes it works out well, sometimes it doesn't work out well, but we'll always give it everything we can. And then in the end, because we have tried to be as open with the music, we hope that that energy comes across and it can be meaningful for somebody to listen to. Mm. But in any attempt to predict or get over when you're making a record always makes it shitty.
Yeah. I have a few more things that I would like to ask before we come to the infamous quickfire round. I'll make it easy. There are some tracks on the new record where I say they sound as if you want people at Berghain to dance to them. Is that important for you, that you have some tracks that really make your fans' feet move?
I mean, I like to dance, and I like a lot of boogie-oriented music. I mean, again, people's responses are their response, and I hope it is a pure response. If somebody boogies while it's happening, I certainly think it's great, but if they are being affected by it in a different way, that's great also. Mm-hmm.
And you have a video out for one of the singles for Common Loon. Can you explain our audience why they should not watch this at work?
Well, there's a lot of butts and a lot of boobs painted like Garfield or like Smurfs, or in lime green, or with soda or cake on them. Probably not appropriate for work, depending on where you work. But
yeah, if you work in a morgue, no problem.
If you work in a morgue alone, no dead people will care. If you work in a brothel, probably no one will care. You know, if you work at a preschool,
work at the treasury,
maybe, yeah.
Depends on which country.
But probably for most jobs. There's a clean version and a not safe for work version. But
we'll put the link for the real version.
Oh yeah, please do. The real version I like the most.
And the last thing before we come to the infamous quickfire round, you will be on tour later this year.
Yeah.
You will be touring the States. You will be touring Europe. I'm not sure if you will be touring any of the other continents.
We're supposed to tour Australia and Asia after we tour in the spring of next year.
Okay, so what can we expect? How is there already thoughts about which tracks you would like to perform? How much of a new record? Certain oldies that you would like to undig for this one?
Yeah, we're doing several songs on the new record. We're doing a few oldies that we have not played in more than 20 years. It's I think half of the set is jams that we know that people want to hear and like. We basically on our Instagram we did like we basically said what songs do you want to hear, and we took several of the songs that people requested, and then also several are ones that we haven't played in a long time, like I just said, a very long time, and some are more obscure or unusual ones. So a pretty, I think a pretty healthy mix of bangers and dark horses.
And how long can we expect the set to be? An hour more?
We do like to do an hour and change. Like I don't like going personally when I go to see shows. I don't like them if they're too long. Yeah. So we definitely want to. Hopefully, people will want more rather than be bored.
That is a good point. Would you also say that it's better to leave them wanting more than leave them exhausted from what you did?
When I go to shows, that's what I prefer. So we're taking it from that perspective. And Angela feels the same way, and I think David feels the same way also.
Thank you very much for all the insight into this. But of course, you cannot leave our interview without going through the infamous quickfire round. I'm not sure if you already heard about it, but
I'm ready.
You will get two alternatives for everybody who's watching us for the first time. You will get two alternatives like Coca-Cola versus Pepsi, Italian style pizza versus deep dish. I don't want to say pizza. Kamala Harris versus the idiot. So Jamie will have to choose and then justify their choice. So we'll start off with, we've been talking about Twin Peaks, so I'll give you two other works by Lynch to decide.
Oh man,
which movie do you prefer? Which movie do you prefer, or would you prefer right now? Lost Highway versus Mulholland Drive.
Oh, that's unfair. They're both so
I don't
good.
mean to be mean, but that's all I can be.
Okay, I'll say Mulholland Drive only because I most recently watched Lost Highway, but I love them both the same. It's only because of chronology, not because I prefer one over the other.
I also like to explain where some of my mad ideas come from. When I saw the cover of Dear God recently, it struck me that it has a certain similarity to a record cover by Lingua Ignota. Don't ask me why.
It does. It's the same, the frame is the same of the portrait. Yeah.
So you'll get two of her records. Caligula versus All Bitches Die.
Oh, All Bitches Die just because the title is so fucking great. I like both of those records though. They're excellent. Also, Caligula is a really good title too. They're both good titles, but All Bitches Die is such a, that's a hot title. You can't ignore that one.
Was that also the first record that you got to know her with, or did you already know her before?
No, I knew the first one, which is Superb.
When talking about electronic music that is off the beaten tracks, there are two artists that I like a lot, and I'm very sure you know them too. And I'm very happy to include a shout out to my friend Tristan here from Offer and Punisher. So you'll get Offer and Punisher versus Arca.
Oh, fuck. That's tough. I'm familiar with both bands. I don't know the music well enough to really make a decision, though. I'd have to listen to more before I really decided. What I have heard from both artists I've really liked, but I haven't had enough time to deeply explore them enough to have a preference.
That's a very honest answer. I also like to mention for all those tech nerds out there that Arca is now using machines built by Tristan.
Oh, that's cool.
Yes. So he will build you anything custom that you want. It's just a matter of price.
I gotta look into that.
Your voice sometimes has a very crooner-like quality. Not always, but sometimes it seems like I can imagine you in a tux. So you'll get the alternatives of Frank Sinatra versus Dean Martin.
Fucking Dean Martin. I hate Frank Sinatra. He's one of my least favorite singers in the world. I fucking hate his singing so much. Oh my God. Dino all the way, forever.
Would
No
it have been
question.
would it have been more difficult if it had been Dean and Sammy Davis Jr.?
That's tougher. I think I would still say Dino, but I think Sammy Davis is a great singer. That's a tougher decision for sure.
Okay, let's make it even a little bit more complicated. Sammy Davis Jr. versus Eugene Robinson from Oxbow.
Eugene Robinson. He's one of my top 3 singers of all time, and we're friends. So although he would I think probably the only singer he would choose over himself would be Sammy Davis Jr. though.
I've had a long discussion with him in one of our first interviews about King of the Jews and about the cover. And that is something that I like about Eugene. He can make you feel bad as hell, which he did in that interview, and afterwards come up to you like, oh, that was one of the best interviews I ever did.
Yeah. he's a magical being, a curious and interesting person. His expression throughout the world is very broad. I have a tremendous amount of admiration for him.
Yeah. And it's a very unique way of singing.
Definitely. Oh my gosh. And a remarkable musician.
As you used the word loon, which of course comes from loony, lunatic, loony bin, my weird mind automatically came up with the Looney Tunes. So I'll give you Roadrunner versus Daffy Duck.
Oh. Like, who do I like better? That the God. They're both so weird. And they're both kind of off-putting and terrible characters. I watched a lot of Looney Tunes as a kid, and I was always made kind of uncomfortable by both Daffy Duck and the Roadrunner. I guess the Roadrunner.
Me too.
He's not. I guess he's just trying to escape the coyote, whereas Daffy Duck seems to be actively involved in causing trouble.
True.
Where the Roadrunner just seems to be evading trouble. Yeah.
But although I have to say there is one thing that I love about Daffy Duck. I think it was like 30 years ago. They did a Looney Tunes cover album only consisting of Beatles songs. And Daffy sings Yesterday.
That's pretty funny.
If I find the link somewhere on YouTube, we'll also put that down here.
Please do. That's
Jamie, last one.
Okay.
And that is because you did a wonderful collaboration with Merzbow.
Oh, thanks.
I'll give you 2 Japanese bands, and you have to choose with which one would you rather do a collaboration. Boris versus Mono.
Oh, probably Boris. I don't know Mono's music really at all. That would be my choice, just because I don't know them at all. I've seen Boris play a couple times. They were excellent. I really loved it.
Yeah, that's a very, very good live band. Had the pleasure of seeing them with Stephen O'Malley on Roadburn main stage. Oh,
that's cool.
And O'Malley still denies the fact that 16 of the 24 amps were his.
Angela, she has a solo practice which is under her real name, Hyunhae Saw, and she opened for Stephen O'Malley, and he did have, I think, 12 amps on the stage, even though it was a solo show.
But one has to admit, the guy
sounded great.
The guy, and also together with Greg, those are just simply geniuses at what they do.
Oh, absolutely. He used them. It wasn't for show.
And for everybody out there, for all the Xiu Xiu fans, you will already be excited about the record in 5 days. I know that, but for everybody out there, should also be very excited, because maybe you also get the hint about the physical violence that Jamie likes in the title track, or in the title for record. I had to look it up. I didn't know it. I'm not. But I have to say once again, Xiu Xiu perform and came up with a wonderful record.
That's very nice of you. Thank you.
it's one of those records that will not leave you and your earlobes for a few days on end. So Jamie, thanks for all your time. I hope that you liked the interview as much as I did.
It was great. It was great to talk to you. Thank you.
And for everybody out there, if you like their work, Friday, and in a few days afterwards, there will be Bandcamp Friday, where you can also get it once again. If you like what we do here, yeah, just go to our socials, give us a link or a subscription here or on Facebook or on Instagram, wherever you want to. For everybody out there, enjoy the rest of your Sunday. And Jamie, enjoy the rest of your evening in Berlin.
You too. Take it easy. I'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.